Alrighty. So I guess I'll ask the first question. First of all, it's really nice of you guys to sit down and do this with us. We're not that big, and $30,000 on Kickstarter is a pretty big deal, honestly, in the indie game world. So that's a massive accomplishment, and congrats for that. It's definitely well deserved.
Oh,
But
thank you so much. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
the first question I just wanted to ask you, based on that, is you've come off a very successful Kickstarter campaign, managing to more than double your initial goal for the campaign. How do you think you grabbed the gaming community's attention so effectively?
Um, yeah. So first of all, happy to be here, and it doesn't matter how big or small you guys are. I'm just really happy that you guys decided to cover SunnySide, and excited to answer all of your questions.
Thank you.
Um, so there's really two big um parameters that went into that, and the first one was we had a relatively eye-catching trailer, I suppose, and this demographic of people, you wouldn't think there's actually that many people that play farming sim games, but it's a huge demographic, and I didn't know that actually, the size of it, before starting to get into this. But the trailer really caught a lot of attention towards the start of the campaign, and then later on, unintentionally, a few more farming games started spawning throughout Kickstarter, and the benefit of that was that we all kind of helped each other grow.
Oh yeah.
um, yeah, so and then a big shout out to actually Claudia Dev from Over Magica. When we cross promoted with their campaign, we got a lot of momentum, and from there, that's pretty much when we started doubling the campaign, which was crazy. But it was mental to look at all these farming games show up on Kickstarter at the same time. And yeah, actually, I like to ask Shay here because you were one of the backers before you joined the team. And what was the selling point for you?
Yeah, so and I want to, go off what Rainey just said. Definitely thanks for having us. It doesn't matter how big or small you guys are as a news studio. It's an honor to do any kind of interview.
Thank you.
But yeah, for me personally, I was involved in my time at Sandrock, and I had signed on for their beta stuff, and that was all happening around the same time. They were getting ready to announce their beta, and so there was a lot happening on their Discord server, and somebody just tossed up the link to it was Coral Island and this SunnySide, and so I went and checked them both out, and I backed Coral Island first. Sorry, Rady. And then you're right. It was the trailer that got me for SunnySide. It was the trailer, and then it was the second I saw that cell phone, that little
Oh yeah,
GIF of the cell phone pop up. I
yeah.
immediately hopped over and I signed up. I was like, I'm in. That's genius. I love it. I hadn't played Persona yet, so I didn't know that that was an inspiration, which now that I know, it's so cool. But yeah, for me, it was definitely uh, it was that community that had been created, and I think also, um, again, kind of a small shout out to the pandemic, um, with Animal Crossing becoming so big in the last year again. I think it created a really huge market again for the farming sim game, and I think that is in
Absolutely.
part is why we all need something relaxing to do, and I think this really hits home on that.
Oh yeah, that completely. Uh, I have a few more questions that I can skip after after getting the answer to that one, but I'm definitely I completely understand what you're saying because most of my farming like game background comes from Stardew Valley, and
Mm,
I it's not that I see a lot of that in your game, but like there's a lot of good features like that. I think you guys take it a step further by adding like those persona like qualities. You got the Sims qualities, like the characters look more like animated or real. It's not like I'm talking to an NPC almost. They look like real people. But
Like,
yeah, I mean
and
that's amazing.
that's been the goal is, any, I don't want to say anybody, but anybody can just create another farming sim. Stardew Valley, and Harvest Moon did such a great job of creating this cool genre, and a lot of games kind of put a new skin on it and then change a couple things here and there, and you have a new farming sim game. What we're trying to do is upgrade it. We want to fix it and change all the things that bother people, like having to water every single individual plant, which I know we're going to get to. But that's the idea, is modernizing all of it.
Yeah, yep, exactly. You guys are definitely revolutionizing farming games as a whole. This is definitely the next step, I believe, in indie game farming games, or the genre for farming for indie games, I should say.
Yeah.
So, my next question, it's one that I don't really see happening with SunnySide, but I guess I'd ask it anyway, just because I think there are a lot of indie developers that are facing this issue. So recently there's been a distrust almost of game developers and gamers, with so many unfinished and unpolished games being released for mass consumption. And it doesn't look like it applies to SunnySide in the slightest from what I'm seeing. But how do you make sure that indie games and AAA developers, when you guys are releasing your games, that you're not releasing it too early?
So Rady and I talked earlier, and we agreed that I was going to tackle this question.
Go ahead.
Mostly because, before I got started on the project, I'm actually studying to get a degree in what's called industrial and organizational psychology.
Oh.
And we study the workplace, and we study the psychology that happens between, stuff like this, and how groups work together, and ergonomics, and organizational plans, and things like that. And at the end of the day, this problem really does exist for all video game developers. I don't think it's something that's just AAA. I think it's something that everybody's worried about, because it's no longer, you do that gold copy, the cartridge goes out, and you're done with the game.
Mm-hmm.
We have constant access to the gamers through updates. And so you're seeing that people are kind of starting to take advantage of that ability to update. And now there's this question of, when is the game considered finished, and what do we say for later on to keep people engaged? And so, I just lost my train of thought, but with this whole mentality, there's so much more that goes into it than, just creating a game and putting it out. It's the biggest multimedia project that anybody could possibly undertake. The only thing that comes even close to it is maybe producing movies, and movies will put out 2, maybe 3 hours, 4 hours if you're going big, of content at the end, whereas with video games, you're putting out 20 hours at the least, sometimes 60, 80 hours with these AAA games, and we have to create everything from scratch. We don't have actors, and we don't have props we can create. We have to digitize all of that stuff. Everything has to be drawn. You can use actors and voice actors, but at the same time, you then have to go put skins on top of them to make them look like the characters, and then you have to model all the facial reactions, and so it's complicated. And I think as gamers, because at the end of the day, I'm a gamer, I just became a developer not too long ago, and as a gamer, I don't think we fully appreciate and understand how hard it is to make a video game. And it's hard. It's really, really hard work.
As a non-game developer, I can completely agree that I have no idea the amount of struggles that a game developer team goes through, especially when pushing for a final release on a game that people are waiting for. Must be almost an impossible task. Much harder than getting a movie out. I'm sure of that.
Oh yeah. I mean, you also have tons of artists who all have to come to agreement on what they're putting out. And artists are opinionated about their work because they're passionate about it.
Yep.
So you have to struggle with putting all that together under the project management. And then you also have to make sure the music all works. It's so complicated.
Yeah, layer upon layer of just
absolutely
nitpicky stuff that you gotta almost, I mean, I'm sure to you and your team, you feel like you have to get it perfect because it's your passion. It's the ultimate thing for you. Your goal is to just release a game that everyone loves. So I completely understand that, it takes so much work, and you never really know when you're going to finish a game. But you just, with updates, you said you're always in connection with the player. So that kind of changes the question a little bit, because now you're able to update the game as you go along. All right, it doesn't change the question. It changes the situation for gamers nowadays, I should say.
Absolutely. Yeah, it definitely changes the situation, for sure.
Yeah.
One side note I like to mention here is basically taking this question from a different angle as well. Everything that Shay said basically is pretty much applies to people who to the developers that take video game as a form of art and want to put something out there that is pretty amazing. But on the other side of it, especially with what you guys mentioned about the update thing, it's kind of became, it's synonymous with the word early access. And that word, whenever you hear it, you kind of shiver a little bit, because it's there's so many, especially with how easy it is to just put a game out there these days on Steam specifically. There's so many people out there that just want to make a game for a quick buck, and that would be the games that are just either asset flips or just they resemble nothing of a game. And I think it's something that happens with every industry, but the fact that game development, especially these days, the tools that are available to just the average Joe is so vast and easy to get access of. The market has been saturated with these kind of stuff, especially after Steam a few years back took away the green light thing. It's crazy if you want to go down the rabbit hole of how many crappy games are on Steam. So many. But yeah, it's really the two sides of a coin. You have the crappy, just the people who just want to grab the money, the quick money if they want. Especially like, I'm going on a tangent here, but I have to mention the mobile game industry. Holy what is that
bad.
even? It's bad.
Microtransaction fueled money grabbing.
Every game is a match 3. Why is every game a match 3? It's infuriating.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I'm on a tangent. Sorry.
Well, I mean, SunnySide started as a mobile game. That was the original.
You might wonder why I changed that. Yeah, that's pretty much why.
Yeah, that's it. Exactly.
Well, thank you for doing that. I don't think I would have played it if it was on mobile, honestly.
I wouldn't have. Absolutely not.
Yeah, no, there's a whole rabbit hole we can go down on how mobile game industries are money grabs. They're awful. Yeah, even with Animal Crossing, what they did now, they purely focus on their mobile game just because of how much more money it brings in than buying a $60 copy of it once.
Yeah, I've been reading about that.
Yeah, Animal Crossing games a disappointment. Sorry.
All right, I'll move on to the next question. So you've branded yourselves as almost a combination of like old school games like Harvest Moon and then like even newer games like Sims and like modernizing that whole mix. But how do you plan on making changes that bring that mix into 2021?
Basically the gameplay is the biggest part that we want to focus on because basically if you go back, Harvest Moon has really good story, right? Characters, NPCs, there are some really good stories to be told there, so that's fine. Graphics, of course, that's something that's going to be evolved with time, so that's inevitable. But I feel like the farm sim / social sim genre has been in a bit of a just not moving forward at all. We see the same mechanics in farming games for years and years. As Shay mentioned, basically, even if you want to water your plants, you have to go to each one of them with a watering can and just do that thing. So even changing tiny aspects of the game, while not alienating. That's the word. The players from the whole gameplay loop is what we're trying to strive for over here. And another reason for why SunnySide has this whole tech section with your mobile phone being a thing, you're having a laptop on your crafting table, is that it'll allow us to add so many of these modern features to the game. And at the end of the day, it's a farming life simulator. So if you see your phone in the game, if you see your laptop in the game, and you know how to already interact with them, it's going to feel a lot more relatable. And I would say basically we're just trying to modernize as many aspects of the game as we can, while also attending enough to the graphics to keep it believable. And atmosphere is the key word here, really. Even if it's not realistic, it has to be atmospheric, so that when a gust of wind goes past you, you can really feel that, other than just seeing an indication of it.
Yeah.
I want to bounce off of that a little bit because you said something I hadn't really thought about before, but you're right. When you see your phone, your laptop in the game, you already know how to use it. When I first pulled the SunnySide up because I was going to go take screenshots and stuff, I was looking at the phone and I went to hit the home button to go back to the main screen. It was just, I didn't even think about it. It just happened because it's what you do on your phone. And so what I've been looking at in kind of helping with ideas and stuff is I'm looking at what is currently happening in gardening now in real life and what mechanics are used now to take care of a garden versus what's been used in games up to this point. And when I look at games up to this point, none of it makes sense because you don't use a watering can in a garden. You don't do a lot of the things in the real world that you do in these games. And so I go back and I play these games. I'm like, this is frustrating. I don't want to do this, So that's kind of been a huge inspiration too, is how gardens, life, technology actually operate and bringing that into the game as much as possible.
That's definitely true.
To summarize this, basically, we look at real life and then we look at the gameplay aspects of what would be fun and what would be frustrating. And then we mix these two together, and then that would be basically how we will implement that feature in the game.
That's completely true, by the way, that almost every farming game has these antiquated features on how to maintain your garden and stuff like that. Yeah, the latest I've seen personally is Stardew Valley doing their crop rotation thing, and that's it's not even like it helps you like with your crops or anything. It's just it's a part of the game you have to do. But that's completely true. There's so much technology now that's made, like, instead of the world being 90% farmers and like 10% population, now it's 10% population, 90% farmers. I mean, no, 10% farmers, 90% population. And the farmers are able to do that because they're getting new technology that, like...
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. There's no need for that many people, so the technology should also, like, if a single-player person was playing a game, they shouldn't have to individually water each of their plants and then wait days to pick them up like that. It should be a little more automated, or not even automated, just simpler than walking back and forth to a well.
We're not trying to create, the next Farming Simulator 19. Like, there's no way.
Yep.
That game is incredible as far as real world farming and the business side of it and everything that goes into it. But we're definitely trying to look at the home gardener. And Rainy and I were talking about this earlier. We kind of want to make a couple statements about how it is possible to grow your own food. It is possible to collect your own water. It is possible to live a modernized, self-sustaining life. And that's kind of what we're aiming for.
That's perfect. Yeah, no, I mean, every question answered. It's just raising my expectations for this. I can't wait to play it on launch. Probably go pick up the pre-order after this.
That would be a good idea. And just that to everybody.
I'll move on to the next one. Let's see, where am I? Yep. With the release right around the corner, is there anything you're focusing on getting done for players on launch day? Like, for instance, I saw cooking. You mentioned garnishes and being able to combine all that very soon within the game, and that piqued my interest even further. But, do you have anything else like that you're focusing on getting done?
So yeah, two most important things to have for release is gameplay and story. Graphics are always something that we can polish up further and further, but if the gameplay is fun, I mean, look at Minecraft, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then story, again, is super important for us. But if we want to go into features, we're definitely going to have cooking done. That's actually the next thing we're focusing on. And we're also still in the process of changing some of the things about how you basically plant a crop, plant a tree, and modernizing that, how you would order that from a website, so to speak. So that's another feature that we're definitely going to have. We've recently started working on a build feature, pretty similar to The Sims as one. Not as comprehensive as Sims, but pretty close to that. Because one question that kept coming up in the FAQ was that, can I move my house?
Yeah.
Will I have a designated house on the farm? And I was like, all right, if you guys want it, let's just give you guys a full build system. So you can build your own barn, coop, house, or if you can't be bothered with that, we also give you the option for the prefab stuff to just place it down. But build system would be another one. Another core system would, of course, be the crafting as well. And on top of crafting, we're adding all of these little gadgets to the game that you can use in different areas of the game. Basically, you have a 3D printer that you can add to your crafting table so that you can, make little decorations, decorative items. There's a drone that's going to be added to the game that will allow you to do the build mode without actually having to build it. So you can blueprint it, place things down, and then actually build it when you have the materials for it. So there are these tiny little ideas that we're still coming up with and implementing as we go on. But anything I forgot to mention, Shay?
Well, I was also so my title has been changing as I've been involved in the product, and now I'm the project manager. And so my job really is giving ideas, but also kind of reining in the feature creep. And I know that's always a huge concern, especially with indie developers. It's, well, we want to add this now, we want to add this now, we want to add this now. So everything that we're looking at adding is with the sole purpose of kind of elevating the gameplay for the player. We're not looking at just adding random features. I mean, we're very close with the community, and we're definitely listening to everything that they're saying, but we get some weird ideas that are just not necessary right now. And so, maybe in a DLC in 2 years, maybe but really what we're looking at is kind of that core mentality of how do we get this message across of modernizing the gaming sim without it being so much that it's too much. And so things like the drone, the ability to move your buildings and have control, we definitely want to give the player that self-agency and not make them feel like they're pigeonholed into something. So that's definitely a huge part of it too.
Yeah, I think I saw the new Harvest Moon games trailer. They're like advertising that you can just pick up your house and move. I don't really like that, not gonna lie. I like having like a home base and then having separate bases off of my home base, not picking up and moving. So I definitely like that you guys can.
SunnySide.
Yeah, exactly. Yup. So that's another thing I'm excited about. All right, so I got a question about your Kickstarter, since you guys definitely crushed that, and I'm sure a lot of indie game studios wanted to know how you crushed it so well. So, development-wise, what was the first thing when you started picking up like speed on your campaign? What did you realize? Oh, we got to get this done. We got to get this done. We got to show this to the players. Anything like that happen when you guys started up your Kickstarter?
Basically, so before the Kickstarter, if it's suggested to get to other developers is, please put your work out there, because I know so many of my friends that are doing this sort of stuff, and game devs are all like cats. They just want to stay in a room isolated. But you have to put your work out there for people to see, and that's how SunnySide got to where it is because we had that little Discord of like 100 people maybe, and they suggesting make a Kickstarter, and then here we are. But put your work out there, and that would really help. Even like if it would be slow at the start, of course, but you can get to really like high areas, especially nowadays. It's so much easier for the indie devs to grow their game. Yeah, I forgot the main question. Sorry.
No, it was a pretty bad question. I started going off on a tangent at the end.
No worries at all. So Kickstarter, and then what we thought we needed. So basically, more marketing material. I made that trailer with the idea that I'm going to show up everything that is in the game, right? But then I realized, okay, now people need something different to look at. I can't just keep showing them that trailer or images from that trailer. So it was that basically 1 month of the Kickstarter, I was just running around making new trailers of different aspects of the game. So even something like the cooking, right? We haven't implemented the cooking fully yet. Actually, we just last week fully write down the gameplay design and the loop and the mechanic we want to have in it, because it's a big part of the game and we want to make sure we get it right. We didn't have that for the Kickstarter, so I just put together a little tiny video just to tell the players we have cooking. So if I want to summarize it, during Kickstarter, it's just more PR, more things to show people, giveaways to run basically, and just ways to grab the attention of everyone. Because even if you have a great game under the hood, they need to see it. You need
Yeah,
to sell
absolutely.
your game within 10 seconds. And it's a crowded market, as you guys know, and it's difficult to do. But if it's eye-catching enough, it will happen. And as sad as it is to admit, graphics are the most important thing when it comes to selling your game,
Yeah.
because that's the first thing they would see.
Yeah.
That's why some companies, I'm not going to name, have a really beautiful trailer that is not representative of the game, and they still
Yeah.
get so many pre-orders. And then when the game comes out, you're like, oh, that's a
What is this?
disappointment. Yeah. So, yeah, PR, a lot of PR, a lot of videos, images, GIFs, especially to show, and social media seriously helps a lot. I basically went into every subreddit, every Facebook group I could find, and just ask the managers first, of course, and then within their consent, I posted about SunnySide, and that really helped, especially Facebook groups. Surprisingly, gave us a lot of exposure towards the start of the campaign. And then after that, when we got some momentum, cross promoting with other Kickstarter campaigns, as I mentioned earlier, it has been very extremely helpful as well. Because if somebody's looking at a Kickstarter campaign of another game, they are ready to spend money on backing a game.
Yeah,
So if your game is there too, that's just the best time to sell it.
that's what happened to me.
We got you. Yes.
Oh, that was
On me.
a perfect answer. I'm definitely going to use that as a soundbite. I'm sure tons of developers and dev teams were very curious on what your process was. But
I do want to add a tiny little something. Just the fact that empathy plays a huge part in it.
Mhm.
Every game designer is a gamer, and you need to ask yourself, if you're going to back a Kickstarter, what do you want to see? Do you want to see a bunch of photos, or do you want to see actual game mechanics? Do you want to see some vague ideas, or do you want to see something that's actually been implemented and tried? And you have to really approach it from the perspective of a buyer. And if you don't do that, there's no way that your Kickstarter is going to work out.
I completely agree. And I especially loved what Rainey said. You got to be able to understand what the game is within 10 seconds of seeing the trailer.
Yep.
I think that's a massive part of it that gamers don't. As a gamer, I don't think I have too great of an attention span. And so when there's thousands of games being thrown in my face on YouTube and on Steam, it takes a lot of willpower to go through all of them and find the game I really like. But that wasn't the case with SunnySide. SunnySide, you're enlightened to what the game is. You understand what features are going past other features that have tackled the gaming genre in the past. But I completely agree. And I'm sure that everyone who's about to start a Kickstarter for an indie game is really grateful for that answer. Cross-promoting, Facebook groups, ask the managers before you post on Reddit, all of it. That was perfect. Yep.
But yeah, it is, as you mentioned, it's sensory overload when you go on social media, when you go on Steam. There's all these things being thrown at you, and you literally have a few seconds to look at all of them while you're scrolling through your feed, or you're just going through the Steam page. So there was a really amazing YouTube video that I saw that basically told me this. It was like, you have to sell it in the first 10 seconds, show the mechanics, don't overwhelm them, but show the best things that is possible. Give them a hook, and for them to just click on it, and that's it. That's your win, basically. If they click on it, you won.
And get yourself a really good video editor like Rainy. I don't know if you had a chance to check out the music video that got put up, and the shout out to Matt. The music is amazing, but Rainy put that video together, and it's killer.
I did not get a chance to see the music video, but that is definitely. I'm looking that up currently, and I will watch it the second I'm done. I promise.
It's so good.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. A music video in the game.
Thank you. I'm very humbled.
One thing I wanted to ask you about was about publishing. So you guys are completely self-publishing your indie game, and in this climate, do you think it's helpful to publish your own game or to have someone else publish it? And do you think that it would have helped your campaign to have a publisher in general? Just someone to specifically tackle the part of bringing the game to the people.
Do you want this one, Rainy, or do you want me to do it?
No, go ahead.
So Rainy started out with the mentality of self-publishing, but after the Kickstarter has been approached by multiple publishers.
Oh, I'm sure.
So we're kind of in that flux of we're currently rushing to put the demo together to put out to the publishers so that we can move forward with that, because there is definitely something to be said for self-publishing. You definitely have more control, you have all the time that you want, and you can really put as much effort as you want to into creating the exact game that you want to. Having a publisher creates a new dialogue, because you get something from them, but you also have to give something back. And so we don't know what that dialogue or relationship is going to be yet, because we haven't chosen a publisher. But there are so many benefits, number being monetary benefits, but also just having assets that you don't have access to otherwise. Things like, being able to put together full cutscenes the way that we want to meet the vision that we have for the game. Having access to different technology or different modeling or custom animations that, while we do have a really talented team, we just don't have the ability to do. So we're definitely looking at publishers. Most of the community knows about that. We haven't mentioned who they are because we don't want to get into those waters, but it's definitely something we're actively considering, because I think there are so many benefits to it.
So if I want to expand on this, basically there are two things that are really important when it comes to publishers. If you're self-publishing, which is actually now, it's the best time to do if you want to. It's really easy to self-publish on PC. It's so simple to go on Steam, even easier on Epic Game Store, and just get your game over there. But the keyword here is console release. And console release is a different story. Even if you want to go all digital, you will have to get access to what is called the dev kit. So basically like an open source version of your console that you can mess around with. And to get a dev kit, it's not about the money. It's not about signing up. You need connections with that company. For somebody to trust you. So if you have a publisher, they're just going to give you that really easily. Another really important keyword here is PR. And the PR that some of these publishers will provide you with is unmatched to anything an indie team can do. Because you have to remember, you're making the game as well. But if you offload that PR to them, you will, first of all, you can focus on the game a lot more, and they can provide the PR with so much more strength than you yourself as an indie dev could. So there are definitely so many benefits to having a publisher. If there are indie teams out there that are trying to get their games on console especially, I do suggest that. Not all publishers are great, of course. Not all of them are created equally. So do your research before you're getting a publisher. But we are actively speaking with those three publishers and trying to get the demo to them so that we can definitely get a deal going on, so that we can get the game elevated in terms of, as Shay mentioned, animation especially is one big area that we want to really work on. We don't have a professional animator right now on the team. And also PR. We really also want to elevate our PR with the help of those publishers, hopefully.
And it's not, it would seem like the right choice is just choose the biggest, most well-known publisher with the most assets and just go with them. But there's so much more that goes into deciding who you want to publish your game. It's looking at their portfolio and the games that they have worked on, looking at who works in their studio and the games that those people have worked on, looking at how selective they are about the games that they choose, looking about how communicative they are with their studios. So there's a lot more that goes into it just than choosing somebody. So like Rainy said, definitely do your research. And if you're approached by a publisher, or even if you want to reach out to publishers, if you go look at your favorite games on Steam and look at their publisher profiles, and most of them, you can go to their website and there's usually a little button that says, send us your game. All the ones that we've talked to have had something like that, where they're actively welcoming studios to send their game out and look for publishers, because right now they're having to do all that scouting on their own. And so if you can send them something, it definitely gets your foot in the door for sure.
I got you. Just got to be careful picking the right publish, though, right? There's
Absolutely.
Not gonna lie, especially with AAA titles that are getting published, I don't really have too much trust in large scale publishers these days. As you mentioned, yeah, they're like the games that are being released aren't finished yet, and they're kind of forcing us to finish it for them by beta testing for free. You know?
Basically.
Yeah, that I don't appreciate on a AAA level, especially it's supposed to be a level of standard of quality almost, or amount of money that you got to spend on the game. So at the minimum, I feel like I should be getting a full game for my $60 every time.
I think that's definitely a fair perspective.
Yeah, so me and publishers not too well so far. But
yeah, there are so many small indie publishers out there though.
Oh yeah.
That are there's tons of them that are doing the same thing that we're doing, except instead of actually doing the development, which some of them do, they develop their own stuff in-house too. But sometimes, they've been successful with a few games and now they're looking to help other indie developers. So they're helping them publish. So there's a lot more available than just the huge names that put out those AAA games. You can look at tiny little games like that you find on Humble Bundle. Those are mostly indie published and they partner with Humble Bundle. So it's definitely doable for sure.
I got you. All right. So be careful when you're picking a publisher, but also look at indie publishers and do background research, especially when picking a publisher. Look at their game portfolio, stuff like that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Got you. Because I'm sure that a lot of game developers who are listening to this, honestly, they don't know what route to take in terms of publishing, especially if they don't have money. They're kind of concerned on how they're going to complete everything without a publisher. Or, I guess it all comes down to the game then, huh? The publisher enjoys the game. Yeah, all right. So moving on, I got a question on crunch culture, which I'm not sure how prevalent it is in the indie game industry, but I'll still ask because I'm sure people are curious. So we've seen droves of freelance developers complaining of its cruel nature from AAA studios. And did your team end up crunching, or do you think it applies to the indie game industry in the same way?
So again, this is kind of in my wheelhouse with IO psychology. Crunch culture exists in every business for everybody. If you're an accountant, you crunch around tax season. If you're a lawyer, you crunch before big lawsuits. If you are a retail worker, you crunch around the holidays. If you are a restaurateur, you crunch around Valentine's Day, so Mother's Day. And so every business has this mentality of there's going to be a time period where you have to give up your personal life and hand it over to the business in order to make that business successful. So we kind of, as gamers, only see it in the gaming world. And I'm not trying to say that, crunch culture is a good thing, but I definitely do think we need to look at the whole picture and how we approach business as a culture. Is it something that we should give our lives over, or should we have that personal time? Should money be spread out? It's such a huge, complicated problem that I think the gaming industry has definitely shined a light on. But it's definitely a problem for everybody that everybody should be concerned about. I mean, I don't think anybody's worked a job where they haven't been asked to stay late, or they haven't been asked to come in early or work on a weekend or pick up somebody else's shift. And crunch culture is the same thing. The difference is because there's all this pressure of that 80-hour game that you need to put out, and you have all of these artists being put together, it definitely gets a little bit more hectic, and it really comes down to good management at that point, how well you manage your team. And so on an indie scale, we don't have that pressure. I mean, Rainy's awesome, and he's not constantly like, get it out.
Yeah. Well, you see, it exists in everywhere basically. But there's a important line between when a job or what you do becomes a chore rather than a passion. because when you're passionate about it, it drives you, pushes you, and even when you're crunching, you don't really feel it, I guess. Um, but in the big scale studios, especially these days, it is something really obvious these days. Like we had the problem with Rockstar, we had the problem with even CD Projekt Red going into it with the crunching, and you see when it is with a big company like that, and you look at the corporate side of things,
Yeah.
it's very much not healthy. Of course, it's not healthy. And you hear people having to sleep under their desk because
Yeah.
they have to finish something by the next day. And it's absolutely terrible. And comparing that to the indie scene, of course, some indie games get into this as well. Sometimes teams clash, teams get. There was this Aeon Must Die, Aeon Must Die. I don't know. It was a game pretty much named something like that, and the entire dev team quit because of clashes that they have with each other. The game's being made by completely different people now, but they
Jeez.
went through so much crunch because of the pressure that they put on each other. So it's something that can happen anywhere, but it's not as bad as it is in the AAA scene. It's in the indie scene is much less pronounced because of the passion that is behind it, because of the scale of the games, especially. Um, so even if you're working so hard on it, because it's you and like a few other people, you kind of want to pull your own weight. You basically are in your own managers in a way. You don't have somebody above you in a workplace telling you to finish these assets by the end of the day. You're like, okay, I have to finish these assets because I want to show these to fans and they're going to be excited. And there's another thing is that in the indie scenes, developers are basically awarded so well. They're
Yeah.
always under a spotlight. But in the AAA scene, they're not really. They're people behind a credit scene that's gonna roll through and their name's gonna pop up for like 10 seconds,
And nobody's gonna
and
watch it.
nobody's gonna watch that. So indie devs are kind of like nowadays, especially, they're being treated as celebrities of the gaming industry. Um, so it's definitely also helpful. So it pushes you a lot more, and the poor programmer or modeler that is working.
Oh, I think you cut off, or that just might be me.
Window on my screen, so that might be why. But yeah, indie devs have a spotlight on them, which gives them a lot more energy to push forward. But AAA studio workers, they don't really get that as much, and I wish they could somehow. But when you have thousands of people working on a game, it's just not possible.
It really is the difference between having a publicly traded company overseeing all the monetary assets and having a group of 5 people doing it as a passion project.
Oh
There's
yeah.
definitely going to be a different mentality to how you approach work. Like he was saying, on the lower end in the indie world, it's all going to be self-imposed pressure, which is easier to deal with. I mean, yeah, it's broken up studios, but you can turn to the person and say, "Shut up, I'm working on it." Whereas you can't really do that when you're being paid a full-time salary with
Oh yeah.
benefits and a 401k. So it makes things a little bit more complicated. And so I think overall crunch culture definitely needs to be addressed within the gaming world. And humans as general need to be reevaluated as humans instead of pieces of machinery putting out a product.
Oh yeah. Completely agree with that. I think the big issue with me for crunch culture is how easy it is that when you get into a crunch for your passion to diminish, and that's true for any project. Like once you're burned out on that project, your passion's completely gone, and you like just thinking about going back to it makes you sick. And so it makes me sad thinking that there are thousands of developers that work for teams that create like massive titles that people love, like Fortnite or Red Dead Redemption 2, massive AAA titles, but then they're coming out of it like burned out zombies.
And even worse, you put the game out and it's not received well.
Oh my god, I can't imagine.
What did you just put yourself through in order to have then the gaming community just kind of crap all over you,
I think that's another reason. Sorry, carry on.
Oh, I was just going to say, it's really easy for us as gamers to say, I hated that game, it wasn't good. But you always have to remember there are potentially thousands of people on the other side of that game whose lives you were influencing by saying things like that. And it's something that we as gamers definitely need to consider.
That's true. Completely true. Yup. You were going to say something, Rainy?
Yeah. I was just going to say that's the reason why so many people are leaving these days the big studios and making smaller indie studios. You can see so many ex-workers at Blizzard, especially, like leaving these days. I mean, Jeff Kaplan left recently, and they're just joining smaller studios of their own because they know they can still drive that passion and treat games as art and not just trying to keep those high corporate managers happy.
Yeah.
And yeah, not just to try to keep the stocks of the company up, actually make a game that makes them happy. And you know, at the end of the day, there are two different views on video games. It's an industry, but at the same time, it's an art form. And these two don't work well together most of the time.
At least in the AAA perspective, I think they don't work too well together.
At least in the AAA, yeah.
I've seen a lot of indie games that, oh my god, breathtaking indie games. I'd say better than the Mona Lisa. Oof.
We've talked about some of them and looked over them about just what people were able to put together with enough time, and that's what it always comes down to. Is you in the AAA world, you have to measure the time input versus the money input, and you have to gauge them with each other. Whereas when you're an indie developer, you can go work a full-time job and then dev on the weekends.
Exactly. Yep.
And take your time and do it the way that you want to, and you don't have that pressure that's happening from investors.
Yeah, I mean, you don't even have that pressure from the audience. Like your fans, most of the times. I don't think indie game fans are like too obsessed with getting their indie game exactly on the second. They're more waiting for the full product that they can enjoy. Yeah. All right. I mean, crunch culture overall seems like a bad thing, but I completely understand what you're saying, that it's a part of all industries and sometimes it's necessary. But at the same time, it also diminishes passion, so we got to figure that out. I'm not the person to do that.
Sure. Yeah, and you can be happy to know there's an entire world of IO psychologists who are studying this right now.
Oh, perfect. All right, so solutions soon to come.
Yeah.
All right. I only got a few more questions for you. I won't keep you much longer. So specifically when I was watching what you guys did with the water hose, and that made me happy that I didn't have to walk back and forth to a well to water each plant. But what do you think is the most revolutionary achievement by SunnySide? And I know that's a hard question because there's probably a lot of things to pick from. But if you had to pick one, what's the most revolutionary aspect?
It's hard to pinpoint just one.
Completely agree.
Yeah. And what I would say is that the two different things, and one of them, I guess, has been already done in to a certain extent by Breath of the Wild, and that is an amazing atmosphere, an atmosphere that feels real. And when you see, as I said earlier, like just a gust of wind going through the scene, you see all the grass moving with it, all the leaves move with it, your hair moving with it. You can hear the sound going from right to left. You can see the water that you have, the embers going in that direction. And that feeling of everything being reactive in the world is what we're trying to bring to this genre that I think has been missing from this genre for way too long. I mean, this is a genre that you focus on nature, and it is missing those aspects. So it's something that I really want to bring to the game. I mean, look at Ghost of Tsushima, the way they've done the particle system, and even just the wind being part of the gameplay, showing you where to go, is just absolutely amazing. But just imagine a Ghost of Tsushima level of world interaction, but with a game that the sole focus is nature, right? I think that's something that is lacking, and we can really bring a lot to the table on that front. But another thing that I would say revolutionary maybe is just the amount of technology, everyday technology we're adding to the game. So as you know, your phone, basically everything that you have access in the game, your inventory, your crafting recipes, they're all an app on your phone. And you have a tablet on your cooking station that you can look up cooking recipes on. Um, as I mentioned, you have a laptop on your crafting table with all of the crafting recipes inside them. So just mixing the everyday life technology with the farming aspect is what we're trying to go for, and I think hasn't really been done before.
Because we kind of have, as creators, you kind of have a responsibility. It sucks, but it's true. You can't do certain things anymore. It's like making movies. When you look at old movies that just didn't age well because of all the sexist jokes that are in them, you have a responsibility to talk about what is important now. And a big part of that is consent. It's something that is becoming more and more important with the Me Too movement, with things that are happening in Hollywood. And it is no longer feasible to present a world where you can just romance anybody you want. That's not sending a good message to people who are playing the game, especially young kids who are playing the game. It's not sending the right message that, you know, you can approach somebody and as long as you give them presents, they're going to like you. Now, I'm not saying that that's a bad thing when it was, you know, in the older games, but it's definitely our responsibility to say, hey, here's a romance system that makes sense, and here's something that you can feel comfortable with letting your kids play, and it's not going to send them the wrong message. And that's why we're kind of really committed to that idea of having those locked sexualities.
That was a lot of revolutionary points to pick up on there. I'm happy about the gender issue. I think that's a great way to tackle it, and I also think that you shouldn't be able to just become like in a relationship with someone by giving them a red hot pepper on their birthday, for instance, like in Stardew Valley. But yeah, no, I think your game might be the most inclusive farming simulator type game I've ever heard of in my life. And that really excites me. Yeah, very modern. So
we're striving for that. Thank you.
Yeah. So last question. I just want to know why your music is so good, especially Joyful Days. I've listened to that at least 3 hours now.
Oh, you haven't even heard the new one yet.
Oh, I'm excited. These OSTs.
we just had a new spring theme. So a little backstory on our composer Matthew. He is amazing. So this is back in, God, I don't even remember, maybe 3 months before the Kickstarter campaign, right? And I would just post GIFs on Reddit, r/Unreal Engine and r/Indie Devs, and I got like around maybe 6 or 7 messages from composers. If you're not a game dev, you get so many messages of people wanting to make you music, and I appreciate it.
True.
But holy, why? I guess just there's so many composers out there that want to work on games these days. But I got those messages, as one of them was Matthew, thankfully. And going through everybody's resume and the musics that they have created, Matthew was the only one with a background in jazz, and I'm a huge fan of jazz in general, and just groovy music, thanks to Persona as well. And I always envisioned SunnySide having this kind of Persona-ish music because it's anime, it has a deep social interactions, and that jazzy groovy music really helps. So Matthew was the best candidate. And now looking back, we actually didn't have it right for the first maybe 3-4 months, right? So we were like 3 tracks in, and then I realized, oh, this isn't right, because basically what happened is that I didn't have a clear view of what kind of music I wanted. I knew I wanted it to be Persona, but I also wanted it to be Zelda. I also wanted it to be Animal Crossing. I also wanted it to be I sent all of these to Matthew, and he came up with some music that was pretty good. And then one day, he made us Breezy, which was the turning point. And my brief for Breezy was, I just want you to freehand this one. Just go with whatever you think is right. Instrument picks is you. Type of music is you. And I sent him a Persona soundtrack. And then he came back with Breezy, and I listened to it, and I was like, oh my God, this is groovy. This sounds good, because And another thing is Matthew's specialty is guitars and anything with strumming strings. So I told him, I was like, play on your specialty. We don't need violins anymore. Don't use violins anymore. Just play those amazing, just the guitar and everything. And yeah, he gave us Breezy. And then after that, we had what was it? The Neon Nights, which was again really jazzy, really
So good.
groovy. We actually used 1970s Japanese, what is called, the genre is called city pop. There's a really famous track called Plastic Love that is in that genre. It's kind of an internet icon. So we use that for that because it's like night music for Japan. So we were like, okay, this is going to work really well for our town. And then after we were done with all of those, I sat down with Matthew and I was like, yeah, so remember that spring theme and the winter theme we made like 6 months ago? I don't think they fit anymore. And then and I told him, can we rework them? And he said, yeah, all right. And then he messaged me and he was like, yeah, I don't think we can rework them. I'm just going to start over. And he started over on it. And now we have our spring theme again. And it sounds so much better than it used to. And we even managed to hire an actual jazz player, one of Matthew's friends, for 2 of our tracks that are on SoundCloud right now. I think it's called Take a Small Break and Busy Life. Those two actually has a real life sax player in it, and he does some really sick solos in it. So do listen to that one.
Oh, will do.
Those two are my favorites. Yeah. But yeah, that's basically the story of our composer and how we came down with the music. It didn't work well at the start, but we worked on it, and now we're there, and I'm really, really happy with every track that comes out.
So the short answer is a lot of work has gone into
a
lot of work.
Especially Matthew sounds like he was sent from heaven. That sounds like a great composer.
Yeah. I got it, Rainy. I gotta tell that story.
Wait, what's
when we were sitting in the chat, the dev room, we were sitting in Discord. I like to watch Rainy do the development because I don't understand computers. And so I'm the writer in the group. And so I like to watch what he's doing because it gives me an idea of how I can handle the PR and stuff and what's happening. And so we were just, hanging out, and I was watching him dev, and Matt popped into the chat, and Matt didn't know how Discord worked, and he didn't know that there was a voice option, and so he just kind of popped in. He was like, oh, that's what that button does. And so we said hello and hey and how are you, and he there's birds chirping behind him, and Rainy's like, what's going on? Is that a bird? And he's like, oh yeah, I'm outside. And, oh, okay. And at this time he was still developing the new spring track, and he was telling us that he was about to go on a hike to get some inspiration for the spring track.
My.
And I was just
yeah, he's the real deal.
He logged out, and Rainy and I were just like, oh my god, he's adorable.
Yeah, bless him. He was like, oh, I didn't mean to join.
Yeah.
I was like, okay,
you're part of the devs group, it's okay, bro. But yeah, just he's not just trying to, because the easy way out is to look at what Harvest Moon has done and look at what Stardew Harvest Moon, to look at all those games that have great music and just kind of like pull stuff from them. But what he's doing, and I don't think he's even really played a lot of those games. Correct me if I'm wrong, Rainy.
He's a huge fan of Animal Crossing, and especially the old ones on the 3DS. But that's it.
Yeah, he's not like a huge gamer, and so he's really just using real world life experience to influence his music, which, like a lot of things, is really what's going to set SunnySide apart. Is we're not trying to be like other games, we're trying to be our own game. And the music really reflects that.
Yeah, and one more thing to mention is that we're not making video game music, right? So my theory is to sound good outside of the game. It has to sound good enough for you to open a Spotify and just listen to it on its own. Not just in the context of the game itself. So a game like Persona does this, for example. So they just do jazz and funk with the scales that are done in there. They don't do video game music, but it's because it just sounds good anywhere. So that's our mentality with the music, and I just tell Matthew to go with those nice grooves that got going on, and yeah, he does deliver really well. I don't really have to brief him that much anymore.
it's amazing what happens when you let artists just be artists.
Absolutely.
Just go
Absolutely
create.
agreed.
Let's see what happens.
No, yeah, I mean, you guys definitely nailed the theme that you can take your music literally anywhere and do anything with it. Because I've been writing articles to it, I've been editing to it. It's just, it really zones me in too. I find that part especially helpful. I can focus really well when I'm listening to it.
That's awesome.
I can't. I want to listen to it.
Yeah.
That's my problem. I'm to start because I'm still in school, so I'm still working on essays and projects and stuff, and I'll go
Same,
to
yep.
put on to listen to. And I sit and I start dancing and I start grooving to it, and I'm just like, I can't listen to this. Like I need, it's too good.
Yeah, no, I'm sitting there typing away at an article, and I
Yeah.
just start bobbing my head for about an hour straight.
It's so
Just getting
good.
into
Matt,
it,
yeah,
yup.
Matt's killing it.
All right, well, thank you guys so much for talking to me. I appreciate that immensely.
No worries. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, so SunnySide, the digital edition, is available on PC with or without early access for around 23 euros or pounds. I'm not sure about my currency signs. I think that's a euro.
Yeah,
Pounds? I got you.
I'm not sure. It could be different depending on your country.
I
think
got
it
you.
does a conversion for you, but yeah.
All right, well, 22.99 euros for the PC edition. I think that's fantastic. I think that's way better than paying $60 for a game. And I know, like, your team will not stop, keep updating this game. It doesn't seem like you're done anytime soon with this.
No, SunnySide 2 is not gonna come out for
No.
probably ever because we
Ever.